With the launch of STS-127 and its crew of 7 astronauts, Space Shuttle Endeavour will embark on a mission to the International Space Station that will include 5 spacewalks and complex maneuvers using 3 robotic arms. This 29th mission to the space station is a banner flight, as space agencies from 5 ISS partners will have representatives on the station when the shuttle arrives. Once Endeavour docks to ISS, 6 Americans and a 2nd Canadian will join this truly international crew. And for the first time in history, 13 humans will live and work on the International Space Station at the same time. The crew of Endeavour includes 3 experienced astronauts and 4 first-time space travelers. Mark Polanski, a former Air Force test pilot and NASA engineer, will be making his 3rd trip aboard the shuttle as he leads the crew of STS-127. He first flew as the pilot of STS-98 in 2001, and then as the commander of STS-116 in 2006. Marine Lieutenant Colonel Doug Hurley will be making his first voyage into space as the pilot of Endeavour. Hurley will be responsible for orbiter systems operations, station robotic arm operations, and will fly the shuttle as it undocks from the station near the end of the mission. Navy Commander Chris Cassidy will serve as Mission Specialist 1. A former Navy SEAL, Cassidy will make 3 spacewalks during the mission, performing a variety of assembly tasks outside the orbiting complex. Veteran astronaut Julie Payette is making her 2nd journey into space aboard Endeavour as Mission Specialist 2. Payette, who was the first Canadian to board the ISS in 1999, will operate the station's Canadarm2 during STS-127. Mission Specialist 3 is Tom Marshburn. Before he was selected as an astronaut, he served as a lead flight surgeon for shuttle and station crews. Marshburn will step outside for 3 spacewalks during this mission. Mission Specialist 4 is veteran astronaut Dave Wolf. Wolf has more prior spaceflight experience than the rest of his crewmates combined. He first flew on STS-58 in 1993 and then served a 4-month tour on the Russian space station Mir in 1997. This will be his 4th spaceflight. Army Colonel Tim Kopra will accompany the STS-127 crew to the station. Kopra is making his first trip into space and will remain on the station as an Expedition 20 flight engineer after Endeavour departs. Endeavour will bring home current ISS flight engineer Koichi Wakata, who represents the Japanese Space Agency. STS-127 will deliver the final elements of the Japanese laboratory complex Kibo, the largest laboratory on ISS. Kibo's main component, the pressurized module, was delivered and installed on the station last year during the STS-124 mission.
We are the last mission that is taking up Japanese hardware on a space shuttle. We've got 5 spacewalks during the course of our dock time up there, and we're going to go ahead and take what we call the Japanese Exposed Facility, we've nicknamed the JEF, and we're going to attach that on our first full day once we're docked on orbit during our first EVA. We're going to take up another Japanese element called the Japanese Logistics Element. We call it Jelly, and we're going to attach that to the JEF, and that's going to have 3 Japanese payloads that we're eventually going to transfer to the JEF and leave it behind.
The Japanese Exposed Facility, the JEF, is an external platform that can hold up to 9 experiment payloads at a time outside Kibo. Payloads will be exchanged or retrieved through Kibo's scientific airlock using the lab's small robotic arm.
I've heard it described as like the front porch for the GEM, the Japanese Experiment Module. And obviously it's more than that, but it looks similar to that. It's a large platform that attaches to the end of that module. And what it could be used for and will be used for is to attach exposed payloads, exposed meaning exposed to space, and monitor those while it's on orbit.
All of the components delivered by the STS-127 crew will be installed in a highly choreographed dance between the spacewalking astronauts and the robot arm operators inside. The robotic operations will involve the shuttle arm, the station arm, and for the first time, the Japanese small arm attached to Kibo.
Based on the ISS configuration these days, just because we have Columbus and GEM out towards what would be the front of the station where we dock, the arms are fairly constrained as to where they can move and their trajectories. So more times than not these days, you have to do some sort of a handoff between the two arms to get something out of the shuttle payload bay.
The Japanese Experiment Logistics Module, or JELLY, is the moving van from which the Japanese arm will retrieve payloads for storage on the front porch of Kibo. The JELLY will carry 3 payloads during the STS-127 mission. As the ISS nears the final phase of construction, the STS-127 crew will also outfit the station for continued operations after the shuttle's retirement.
We will be putting several large, we call them ORU, orbital replacement units, large boxes of equipment to be spares for future use outside of the space station. We will be changing the batteries on the P6 solar array, 6 large batteries that each weigh around 300, 350 pounds, the size of small refrigerators.
During Endeavour's time on orbit, STS-127 will mark several milestones for the astronauts and for the station. When the STS-127 crew arrives, they will be greeted by the station's full complement of 6 full-time residents. This will be the first time that 13 people have been aboard station at the same time, and will set a record for the largest number of humans in space on the same vehicle at the same time. It will also mark the first time that 2 Canadians will be on orbit at the same time, as Canadian shuttle astronaut Julie Payette joins Expedition 20 flight engineer Bob Thirsk of the Canadian Space Agency, who will already be on the station when Payette arrives.
We had our first astronaut to go on board the space shuttle in 1984. And now we are going to have our first Canadian astronaut that will stay for a long period of time on board the space station. Our first long-duration astronaut, Bob Thirsk, who will stay for 6 months. That will be historical.
The first of the mission's 5 spacewalks will be performed on Flight Day 4, as Wolf and Copra work with the crew inside to prepare to install the Japanese experiment module exposed facility.
The only way to do this maneuver is to have Canadarm2, the station arm, pick out the platform from the cargo bay, lift it up, push it to the side.
Then we have to walk off the station arm, which means we have to grapple the mobile base. The base then the base moves down the truss, and then Mark and Julie hand the exposed facility back to Koichi and I with the station arm, and then we install it on the GEM.
Before wrapping up the first spacewalk, Wolf and Copra will attempt to deploy critical spare parts platforms on the station's truss. The platforms failed to deploy properly during STS-119 in March, and will be needed when the STS-129 crew delivers additional spare parts to ISS later this year. Flight Day 5 is filled with more robotics, this time featuring the ICC VLD, the Vertical Cargo Carrier, or VIC. The VIC will be unberthed and handed off from the shuttle arm to the big arm on station in preparation for the second spacewalk. The following day, Flight Day 6, Wolf and Marshburn will step outside for EVA-2 as they unload ISS spare parts from the VIC. These parts include 3 orbital replacement units, or ORUs. The astronauts will move these pieces of equipment from the cargo carrier to an external stowage platform in case they are needed at some point in the future. Meanwhile, inside the shuttle and station, things will be just as busy for the robotic arm operators, as all 3 of the robotic arms will be in use, sometimes all at the same time.
For the first 2 spacewalks, I'll be the IV crew member inside the vehicle, kind of coordinating the procedures. And then the EVAs 3, 4, and 5, I'll be outside as one of the EV crew members.
Flight Day 7 calls for more robotic multitasking. the Jelly Logistics Module will be temporarily installed on the Jeff Exposed facility on Kibo. The Vic cargo carrier will be relocated to the station's P6 truss. During EVA-3 on Flight Day 8, Wolf and Cassidy are scheduled to change out 4 of the 6 batteries for the P6 truss arrays. On Flight Day 9, astronauts on board the station will use the Japanese robotic arm on Kibo to move 3 payloads from the Jelly, installed earlier in the mission, to the Jeff. Japanese astronaut Koichi Wakata will transfer the first payload, followed by Tim Kopra moving the second, and Commander Mark Polanski the third. On Flight Day 10, Cassidy and Marshburn will change out the remaining 2 batteries for the solar arrays on the P6 truss during EVA-4. The 5th and final spacewalk is scheduled for Flight Day 13. Marshburn and Cassidy will climb back into their spacesuits.
EVA-5, as it's scheduled today, is going back out to the Japanese experiment facility and completing its outfitting, getting all the various pumps and coolant lines and equipment ready to operate.
Near the end of the mission, before undocking, the Vic cargo carrier and the empty logistics module will be rebirthed in Endeavour's payload bay for the return to Earth.
We feel like the thousands of people behind the scenes that we know are responsible for these flights are there with us on the flight.
It is an incredible amount of work to make a shuttle flight successful and to accomplish all the mission objectives. And it really is mind-boggling to think that these thousands of people have to do their job right every time for that amount of time in order for everything to go well for us in space. And so, you know, we can't thank them enough for everything that they do.
So whether you're, the engineer out there working on the piece of hardware that somebody else is going to work on orbit on an EVA, I truly believe that this is the quintessential team effort. Everybody has a role, everybody's an equal in doing this, and that it's important that we all have some sense of ownership and some pride of ownership in what's being accomplished.
The crew of Space Shuttle Endeavour delivers an external porch to the International Space Station's Kibo module, making that Japanese science laboratory fully operational and open for business. STS-127 is the 3rd trip to the station for Commander Mark Polanski. He was previously the pilot on STS-98 in 2001, and the STS-116 mission in 2006 was his first as commander. Polanski grew up in Edison, New Jersey, about a 40-minute train ride, he says, from New York City, which is exactly where he was in 1969 when astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed on the moon.
I was at a baseball game at Yankee Stadium in New York when we actually physically landed on the moon. And they interrupted the game and made an announcement that we landed on the moon, and everybody went crazy at the stadium, and everybody stood up and sang God Bless America, and it was pretty special.
But some years later, a more personal experience with history during his freshman year at Purdue University had an even greater impact on him.
And I got to meet Gene Cernan at the university doing a little social at one of the common areas of my dormitory. And that really got me thinking about a path and got me thinking about Air Force ROTC and becoming a pilot and a fighter pilot and a test pilot.
Polanski graduated in just over 4 years with a bachelor's degree in aeronautical and astronautical engineering and a master's degree in aeronautics and astronautics. He then joined the Air Force, eventually becoming an aggressor pilot, an aircraft tactical instructor, and a test pilot. In 1992, he left the military for a job as an aerospace engineer and research pilot at NASA. Selected as an astronaut in 1996, Polanski is excited about the work NASA is doing.
I mean, I'm biased. I work for NASA. I'm an astronaut, but I remarkably kind of think that, NASA's a pretty darn cool place, and we do pretty amazing things. I think that we've been in low Earth orbit long enough, and so I'm really excited to be a part of this process that gets us out of here and gets us to more human exploration.
Doug Hurley, the crew's pilot, is making his first space flight. Born in the upstate New York town of Endicott, but raised in nearby Appalachian, Hurley became interested in space by watching Saturday morning TV. Sometimes in between the cartoons, they would show these little clips of the Skylab missions and these guys running around in circles inside Skylab. And that, you know, as a young kid, obviously you think, wow, that would be pretty neat to get a chance to do. So I think it kind of planted the seeds for me. After high school, Hurley received a Navy ROTC scholarship to study civil engineering at Tulane University. After earning his degree in 1988, he joined the U.S. Marines as a second lieutenant, eventually becoming a naval aviator in 1991. Hurley has served in the Western Pacific as a fighter pilot, been a weapons and tactics instructor, and is the first Marine ever to fly the FA-18EF Super Hornet. In July 2000, Hurley was camping with his father in Canada when he got an unexpected voicemail from NASA's chief astronaut. So I called the number that he left with the satellite phone, you know, and got a hold of him, and he said, hey, do you want to come work for us? And of course, you know, you can't say no to something like that. And it was just an incredible experience to be out in the wilderness with my dad. It was probably one of the more special moments in my life and something I'll never forget. Mission Specialist Chris Cassidy is one of 4 spacewalkers on the crew. The 39-year-old from York, Maine says although he wasn't around during the Apollo era, it still left an impact on him.
I've always been fascinated with space and technology and just the fact that in 10 years we were able to go from 0 to the moon has always fascinated me. After high school, Cassidy went to the Naval Academy Prep School. He then attended the U.S. Naval Academy, where he earned a bachelor's degree in math. From there, Cassidy completed training to become a member of the U.S. Navy's Special Operations Forces, known as the Navy SEALs. Once I got in the Navy and in the SEAL teams, I learned about another SEAL, Bill Shepard, who was an astronaut, and my career track was kind of paralleling his, so I thought, well, shoot, I can certainly give it a try as well, so that's what I did. So he enrolled in grad school at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, graduating in 2000 with a Master of Science in Ocean Engineering. He then applied to NASA and was selected as an astronaut in 2004. STS-127 is Cassidy's first trip to space, but he hopes it won't be his last. I think I'm in a fortunate position as a new astronaut to be part of a shuttle crew now and maybe a space station crew in my mid-career, and at the tail end of my career, hopefully an exploration mission to the moon. So it's very exciting for me personally. This is the second space flight for mission specialist Julie Payette of the Canadian Space Agency. In 1999, she flew on STS-96, which performed the first space shuttle docking to the International Space Station. The native of Montreal, Quebec, Canada, says when she was young, the excitement created by the Apollo moon missions convinced her that she wanted to be an astronaut, even though there was no such thing at that time in Canada. But it didn't matter. And that was the power of exploration, of doing something beyond our reach, of pushing the envelope, is the fact that when we do something like that as human beings, it impacts a whole generation of kids that want to do the same. When Canada selected its first 6 astronauts in 1983, Payette was a second-year electrical engineering student at Montreal's McGill University. After earning her degree, she worked as a computer systems and research engineer. She also earned a master's degree in computer engineering from the University of Toronto. Then in 1992, when she learned Canada was looking for candidates for its second group of astronauts, Payette initially wondered how her credentials would measure up to those of the other 5,000-plus applicants. You know, I'm a strong believer in statistics. If I do apply, I have a chance. If I don't, I have a 100% chance of not being picked. So I applied, and lo and behold, now I'm extraordinarily proud to be a crew member on STS-127, 2J, and going to space again for a second time with such a great team. Hang on, we gotta do 2. Tom Marshburn is a spacewalker and one of 2 medical doctors on the crew. Born in Statesville, North Carolina, he later moved to Atlanta, Georgia. Marshburn says learning about the early space missions as a youngster sparked his interest in pursuing a space-related career.
It was a little bit late in high school, and I thought, boy, I'd love to work for NASA. I'd love to build rockets. That's what I wanted to do, build spaceships. Then I knew I needed to be good in math and science, engineering in particular.
So the graduate of Atlanta's Henderson High School went on to earn a physics degree from Davidson College in 1982 and a master's degree in engineering physics from the University of Virginia in 1984. But then he discovered he loved medicine. So he enrolled in med school at Wake Forest University.
I did my residency in Ohio, went to medical school in North Carolina, but I really had cut my teeth in medicine, I'd say, in Ohio. A wonderful place to train because I was part of, one of the reasons why I went to residency there is because I could be a life flight physician as a resident.
Marshburn was an emergency physician in Seattle, Washington, when he was accepted to a NASA program designed to introduce outside doctors to aerospace medicine. In 1994, he became a NASA flight surgeon and was selected as an astronaut in May 2004. STS-127 is Marshburn's first spaceflight. Dr. Dave Wolf, the chief spacewalker of NASA's astronaut office, has flown on 3 previous space shuttle missions. STS-58 in 1993, STS-86 in 1997, and STS-112 in 2002. The native of Indianapolis, Indiana, says, as a kid, he was motivated by the early accomplishments of America's space program.
I saw Ed White do the first U.S. spacewalk from a Gemini capsule, and I said, I know I could do that. And it made me work harder in school. It gave me a vision. It inspired me just as it did everybody else.
After high school, Wolf attended Purdue University, graduating in 1978 with a degree in electrical engineering. Then he decided to follow in his father's footsteps.
I remember when my father went to medical school. He did it rather late in his life. I used to actually help him study, and that inspired me to go into medicine. I studied medicine and did an internship and eventually aerospace medicine in the Air Force Air National Guard as a flight surgeon, and ended up applying this as a bioengineer at NASA to biomedical research projects.
Selected as an astronaut in January 1990, Wolf also has a long-duration space mission to his credit. After saying goodbye to the STS-86 crew in October 1997, he spent 128 days as a crew member on board the Russian Mir space station.
It's a very interesting space to go to in your mind, where you now live in space and zero gravity is your normal environment. And the unusual abnormal environment is where things fall and you have to, and you're restricted to the floor. So I really enjoyed kind of cutting the cord to Earth and living on a spacecraft.
U.S. Army Colonel Tim Kopra swaps places with the Japanese astronaut Koichi Wakata as a crew member on board the International Space Station. Kopra was born and raised in Austin, Texas, and like most other 60-year-olds who saw Neil Armstrong walk on the moon, he wanted to be an astronaut.
I think I was even more enthused by that because I had an older brother who was a complete space nut. He built all the models. We stayed up late together watching the moon landings, and I was infected with this enthusiasm for space as a young child.
Although the astronaut dream faded, Kopra maintained a love of adventure. After high school, he won appointment to the U.S. Military Academy and had his aha moment when he heard former West Pointers address the Corps of Cadets about their experiences in the space program.
And there was an interesting connection between this childhood dream and the reality that these older men were able to accomplish. And to me, it re-enthused me in terms of that being a goal, and I continue to pursue it beyond my time at West Point.
After finishing his Bachelor of Science degree, Kopra was designated an Army aviator and assigned to Fort Campbell, Kentucky. He flew Apache helicopters in Germany and in Operations Desert Shield and Desert Storm. He later earned a Master of Science in Aerospace Engineering at Georgia Tech and completed training at the Navy Test Pilot School. Kopra was assigned to NASA's Johnson Space Center in 1998 as a Vehicle Test Integration Engineer and was selected as an astronaut in 2000. Kopra also holds a Master of Strategic Studies degree from the U.S. Army War College.
I've been training towards this specific mission for a very long period of time, and so I guess in general the thing that I'm excited about is being able to fulfill the last several years of training and to do my small part to help out the advancement of science and space exploration.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us very early at NASA's Kennedy Space Center here in Florida for the launch postponement briefing for STS-127 mission for Space Shuttle Endeavour. Joining me tonight is Mike Moses, Space Shuttle Program Launch Integration Manager, and Mike Leinbach, Shuttle Launch Director. We'll hear from the panelists and then we'll take some questions. Mr. Moses.
Thanks. I'm going to let Mike talk first here because he'll tell you what happened and how we scrubbed, and then we'll come back to me and I'll talk about what we're going to do next if we can figure that out.
Okay. Well, we got into tanking on time this evening. Everything was going perfectly fine per plan. But just like on the STS-119 mission, we suffered a leak at the ground umbilical carrier plate just as soon as we got into the topping part of the sequence on the hydrogen load. The signature, the leak signature, was almost identical to what we had 2 flows ago. The guys on console cycled the valve as they did previously. They cycled the valve 4 times trying to clear up that leak, and in the past, every now and then that'll work for us. This time, again, it didn't work for us, and so we were out of spec leakage at that disconnect. That's the disconnect at the side of the tank that falls away right at T0, so we have to maintain that connection until we lift off. So again, we suffered that leak there. We did our standard troubleshooting. The leak did not clear up, and we got into our drain operation at that point. Looking briefly at the plan ahead, it's going to be very similar to what we did for STS-119. It's a 4-day scrub turnaround is what we're estimating right now. That's a preliminary plan, but I would not expect it to be any shorter than that. We're going to have a scrub turnaround meeting with the launch team here at 2:30, and I'll go back over there and get together with the guys, and we'll put together the details of the troubleshooting plan. But here again, it's going to be very, very similar to what we went through last time on STS-119. And so we'll see where that plan lays out. We'll show that to Mike tomorrow afternoon or Sunday whenever we're ready to get together with the program and see what that would result in another launch attempt. So another leak out of spec. There was no way we could have continued, and we did our standard troubleshooting, try to clear that leak up, and nothing worked. And so we got into our drain. The drain should be complete right about now, and we get into an inerting, boil off and inerting of the external tank. And that'll take us the better part of 24 hours to get that done, and then we can get our hands on the hardware. So that'll be, sometime Sunday morning until we can even get our hands on the hardware. And then we'll know a lot better after that time what exactly the problem is inside that system. So with that, that's where we stand. We had to get into a drain, and that's where the team is now.
So let's see, pretty much again similar to what we had last time. There's not a lot of mission management team decisions to make based on this. We kind of know what the problem is, and we know how long it's going to take and what we have to go do. So we're going to let Mike's team work, refine the plan, tweak it, but we're pretty much looking at that 4-day kind of plan, looking at it no earlier than the 17th launch attempt. And so we decided not to meet with the MMT. There's no real decision-making to make. We're going to get back together Sunday, probably late Sunday afternoon, after we do get out there at the hardware and take the gup apart and see what's happening with the seal. There's some other little nuances of the turnaround plan that'll give Mike's team time to work through, the launch team time to work through and see what our real posture is for coming back and trying another launch attempt. Obviously, the 17th is a range problem. There's a conflict out there with LRO, LCROSS. We haven't even begun to work that yet. We've had some thoughts ahead of time. We didn't really go very far because we didn't think we need them. But we'll start those negotiations tomorrow and see where we get both with the range and with the NASA payload with LRO, LCROSS. So no real changes there, and I don't have any real information for you, but we'll keep you posted as to how that goes. Looking at our window, we have from the shuttle side and the station side, we have through the 19th. Our beta cutout officially starts on the 20th. We've done the math, and we know we can pull the 20th in pretty easily from a thermal standpoint. We do have to take a look at the how the atmosphere has been dragging down station. Hopefully, it has been dragging it down a little. We need to come down just a little bit for that window to work. There's a phase angle that sets up based on our launch days, what our catch-up rate is able to be. We have a limit that we're able to do with the shuttle, and right now we're close to that limit on the 20th. We think it'll be good, but we'll have to wait and sharpen our pencils as we get a little closer. So we think we'll be able to get the 20th as our last launch attempt before we stand down, and then we'd come back in July. I think it's the 11th would be our first day back on the range after a beta cutout. So that's where we stand with the range. I haven't even begun those negotiations. It's the middle of the night, and there's no need to do that now. We'll wait till morning. And like I said, we kind of know we're on a 96-hour, 4-day plan here, so there's no real rush to see where that goes. You know, we had this happen before. We didn't really find root cause. We've been testing the GUP and the interface. One of the things that's hindering us is we tore apart all our test hardware a few years ago, and we no longer have that umbilical mock-up down here at the Cape that lets us do dedicated testing. So we've been doing testing on the vehicle as we go. We did a lot of testing actually with 125's GUP. We did a lot of testing with this one. And testing is probably not the right word. We did a lot of measurements, I should say. You know, we measured how that seal fits. We looked at it under a microscope. We looked at it under cryo conditions. We didn't really find anything that would tell us what common cause is, but obviously something is going on. The second time in 3 flights, something is going on. So teams are being kicked off to go look at that and talk about what happened. Did something change that we don't know about? But really, our plan is going to be pretty much what it was last time, which is just R&R that seal, and then we really have to tank again to see what happens. So again, we're kind of in that same boat. We were joking that they could have just played the tape for you guys of what we talked about back on STS-119. So with that, that's all I have. We'll get to questions so we can let the guys get back to work here today.
Thank you. When the microphone comes your way, please state your name, affiliation, and to whom you're addressing your question. Mark.
Mark Kirkman, Interspace News. 2 parts, actually. First off, how far out of limits were you? I mean, is this significant wing or just a smidge over the LCC? And secondly, are you thinking that this might be a cycle issue? Because didn't you have repetitive mates on the 119 GUP as well as this one with the roll-around?
Yeah, the leak signature was out of spec, way out of spec. Those particular sensors in there can pick up to 4% hydrogen, and you look at the trace, and we were up above that. So it was somewhere above 4% in that cavity. So a significant leak, I will call it. And then the issue of mating and remating, mating, demating, and remating may have something to do with it. Just don't know yet. We'll go study that in detail when we take the pieces apart and see if there's any evidence that may be a contributor to the problem. Just don't know yet. But again, we'll get the thing apart and go look for root cause. Hopefully we find it this time and we'll press on.
Hi, Mike Schneider, Associated Press. If you can launch as early as later in the week, I guess Thursday or Friday, will you try 3 in a row? And then also if you could tell me how late does the window last into July?
Let's see. As far as launch attempts right now, if the team is ready to go on the 17th, we do not have the range that day. So I would have to negotiate with the Atlas and the LRO L-Cross mission to get out of the way so that we could have the range. And then again, it's how many days would they give me? They only have a 4-day window, and it's a lunar rendezvous. So they have those 4 days, and if they don't make that, they have to wait, I think it's 2 weeks to try again before they could go again. So there's 2 parts to that. One, we don't want them to miss their lunar rendezvous window because that's very difficult to replan around. The other thing is the range is kind of backing up, and especially on the Atlas pad, there's a lot of payloads that are waiting for LRO to get going, and having a payload that needs to wait every 2 weeks for its launch window to reopen could cause some problems if they have to ripple down the range. So, we're going to have those negotiations. I can't begin to foretell how they're going to go. We had set ourselves up ahead of time. That payload is a NASA customer, so it makes some of my negotiations a little easier. So I kind of already know that we had pretty much agreed ahead of time that we would probably not bump them off the range, but it would all depend on why we needed to scrub in the first place. We didn't really talk about a failure like this. We were mostly thinking weather. And so we'll go and re-talk again, but I don't expect that we'll make them go away and then we'll take that whole window. But if we do, we'd try the 17th and could go all the way through the 20th. I don't know that in that safe scenario we'd do 3 in a row. Same kind of thing with the team overnight tanking. That's not a great thing to do. But so that's all speculation. It all depends on what happens on the range as to tell me how many days we really have to try. Once we come into July, I don't know when our next beta cutout is. I think it's sometime in the fall, so that's a pretty long window. There's no worries once we fill into July.
Clara.
Hi, Clara Moskowitz with Space.com. Was the leak discovered at relatively the same time in the tanking schedule as last time?
Yeah, it was discovered at almost identically the same time, and it happens when the hydrogen tank is filling up and getting colder and colder up at the top, and then we start cycling the vent valve, and every time we open the valve we saw that leak. So yeah, it was eerily the same as 2 flows ago.
Chris Gebhardt with NASA Spaceflight.com. I know this tank, when it got here, there was a misalignment with the ground umbilical carrier unit. It got replaced in the VAB, and that misalignment was initially, I think, for the pyro detachment at T0 and putting stress on that. Any indication that that misalignment could have played into this, or was that solely for the disconnect at T0?
You know, still, guys, it's really too early to say. You know, we did those alignments and we got it within spec. And so I would say right now the alignment and the configuration out there is per design. Again, until we open this thing up, we just don't know. We would not have pressed on if we thought it was out of spec. That's certainly the case. So we did a lot of work to make sure it was aligned. You know, we were going into this thinking it was perfectly aligned. So speculation right now. Until we open it up, we won't know.
Dan.
Yes, Dan Billow from WESH-TV. If I may, two questions for Mike Moses. Just kind of a cleanup on the launch window. Assuming LRO gets a weather delay on the 17th and has to go the 18th, that bumps you to the 20th, right?
Correct.
Thank you. And for Mike Leinbach, would you just discuss hydrogen? I mean, it's kind of obvious, but you know, viewers don't understand why you need to be so careful with hydrogen gas.
Hydrogen's a very volatile commodity, and in concentrations greater than 4% in air, it can burn, and it can burn all the way up to 96% in air. And so we have our ground safety limits set at 4%, and then even from that 4%, we back down quite a bit from there for allowable leaks. And so we set our launch commit criteria at 20,000 ppm, which is 2%. If we violate that, we can talk about going up to 4%, but once we bust 4%, we are done for the day, and this one was above that. It's a very volatile commodity. We don't like venting to atmosphere, obviously. That's why we try to capture all hydrogen gas and then vent it up the flare stack and burn it off. This was all contained within that system. But again, we had a situation where we were leaking inside this cavity, even though we were taking that away from the ship. It was leaking to the point where we weren't sure about the condition of that disconnect, and so we wouldn't have wanted to go through flight and disconnect with a possible hydrogen gas at that disconnect. So it's a commodity you just don't mess with. We are very, very sensitive to hydrogen on the ground, and to make sure that thing's sealed properly at liftoff, so we weren't venting overboard and maybe run into a situation where we didn't have enough hydrogen in the tank going uphill. So this was way beyond the point where we even wanted to talk about continuing. It was just very, very similar to 2 flows ago. We just were not comfortable at all with pressing on the way we were.
Hi guys, Bill Harwood with CBS News. 2 quick ones for either Mike, I guess, or both Mikes. First of all, who makes the decision? Who has to make the decision on whether or not Shuttle can bump LRO? Is that Chris Scalise, or is it somebody else that makes that decision? The second question, I'm confused on the timing of the windows. If LRO went on the 17th, because of the way the shuttle launch time backs up, I was under the impression you couldn't make the 19th because the range couldn't turn around in time, and that the 20th would be your only day if they went on the 17th. So I'm just trying to make sure I understand if the 19th really is an option. Thanks.
Yeah, Bill, you're right on the second part. The 19th currently is not an option. We had talked about it pre-launch as potentially an option. The range kind of said that until they got a little closer, they weren't going to sharpen their pencils. They did that a couple days ago, and they did come back and tell us that the 19th from a crew day would just not work for them. So if I said the 19th here a little minute ago, I apologize. I had that stuck in my head. But yeah, the 20th would be the first we'd get back on if LRO launches on the 17th. And then as far as the decision, that's a NASA agency decision. You know, it goes up through the chain of command. But ultimately, with Chris Scalise as the acting administrator, I'm sure he'd be weighing in on that if he needed to. You know, again, there's a lot of factors at play with the shuttle schedule, the station manifest, the lunar window. A lot's going to play. They still have a few days of launch processing to do on their own side to see where they're at in their count. So nothing's a foregone decision, and we're going to keep that open, and we'll just probably both proceed as planned until we get to the point where we absolutely have to make a decision as to who's going first.
Do we have any further questions? Okay. That will conclude the STS-127 launch postponement briefing. For more information or updates, please visit www.nasa.gov/shuttle. Thank you.
Die US-Raumfähre Endeavour kann heute nicht wie geplant zur internationalen Raumstation ISS aufbrechen. Die NASA musste den Start wegen Problemen bei der Treibstoffversorgung absagen. Techniker hatten kurz zuvor ein Leck am Tank entdeckt. Ein neuer Startversuch kann frühestens am kommenden Mittwoch erfolgen.
Bei den Startvorbereitungen wurde erneut ein Leck in einer Wasserstoffleitung am Tank entdeckt. Das gleiche Problem hatte schon einen Start am Wochenende verhindert. Die Endeavour soll 7 Raumfahrer zur internationalen Raumstation bringen. Ein neuer Startversuch ist erst wieder in gut 3 Wochen möglich.
You're with the Business Edition on BBC World News. I'm Tanya Beckett. NASA has confirmed that a potential leak of liquid hydrogen has delayed today's expected launch of the US Space Shuttle. It's another blow to the program, which is scheduled to come to a complete halt next year. In Washington, they're asking, what next? Is the United States really committed to human spaceflight and the pledge of Presidents Bush and Obama to put man back on the moon? And beyond, of course. Here's our Washington correspondent, Philippa Thomas.
All forlorn, the shuttle that was supposed to launch today, and soon this entire program will be history. So what's next? By August, Congress will hear the verdict of the panel which convened today, hearing this appeal direct from NASA for funding.
The challenge is going to be greater because this time we're not just going to go back to the moon for a few visits for a few days, but ultimately to travel beyond the moon, ultimately to Mars and other destinations that will require long-duration spaceflight.
This is the theory, the Orion space capsule, designed to go back to the moon by the year 2020. We filmed it outside the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, the most visited museum in the world. But as the next generation dreams of infinity and beyond, what do most Americans know and care about future lunar missions?
There is very little public awareness of the program after the shuttle is phased out. Many people are going to be shocked that we're giving up on wings and wheels, landing on runways, going back to parachuting in the ocean, you know, having a booster on top of a rocket. I don't think they really even know we're going back to the moon.
Astronauts Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and then...
What a contrast to the glory days of 1969, when the world tuned in to watch the first moon landing. This was the climax of a space race driven by the Cold War.
I'm going to step off the limb.
It wasn't supposed to be the final frontier.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Putting first man on the moon was about making history, not counting costs. Today, we're much more hard-headed. Members of Congress have just cut 16% from NASA's budget for manned spaceflight, describing it as a timeout until today's independent panel reaches its conclusions about America's future in space. Philippa Thomas, BBC News, Washington.
35 Jahre zurück, als die Amerikaner die potenzielle Gefährdung ihrer Weltraummissionen erfahren müssen. Apollo 12 gerät unter Blitzbeschuss. Der glücklicherweise folgenlose Warnschuss aus dem Himmel bewegt die NASA zu umfangreichen Vorsorgemaßnahmen. Heute verfügt sie über das beste Erkennungs- und Schutzsystem weltweit.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, Main Engine Start, 0 and Liftoff.
Jeder Start erfolgt nun unter den bestmöglichen Sicherheitsvorkehrungen. Das Kennedy Space Center erstreckt sich über eine Fläche von der Größe Manhattans. Die gigantische Einrichtung lädt Blitze förmlich zum Einschlag ein. 11 Startrampen, Wasser, weite offene Räume, ausgeklügelte Telefonanlagen, überall hochkomplizierte elektronische Systeme und Gebäude, in denen verschiedenste Treibstoffarten lagern. Die NASA setzt voll und ganz auf exakte Erkennung und Vorhersage. Die Mitarbeiter spüren jede Form von Elektrizität in den Wolken auf und messen die Feldstärken am Boden. Steht ein Start bevor, spielt das Wetterteam eine entscheidende Rolle. Jeder kleinste Hinweis auf mögliche Stromladungen in den Wolken führt unweigerlich zum Startabbruch. 1987, 49 Sekunden nach dem Abheben, wird eine unbemannte Atlas Centauri-Rakete vom Blitz getroffen. Ein Stillstand des Navigationssystems führt zu erheblichen Kursabweichungen. Verzweifelt versucht der Kontrollraum, die telemetrische Datenverbindung wiederherzustellen. Als das Vorhaben misslingt, sieht sich die NASA gezwungen, die Rakete zu zerstören. Die Vorhersage des Wetterteams hat sich als fehlerhaft erwiesen. In den Wolken produziert die Alpha Centauri als Verbindungsglied zwischen den geladenen Wolkenbereichen ihren eigenen Blitz. Eine Mikrosekunde reicht und Millionen von Dollar sowie Jahre der Planung verpuffen im Himmel über Florida.
Verzögerung. Der Start der US-Raumfähre Endeavour ist erneut um 24 Stunden verschoben worden. Das teilte die NASA mit. Grund sei ein Blitzschlag, der die Startrampe getroffen habe. Die entsprechende Stelle müsse zunächst genauer untersucht werden. Die Endeavour hätte in der Nacht vom Weltraumbahnhof Cape Canaveral mit 7 Astronauten an Bord zur ISS starten sollen. Die US-Raumfähre Endeavour soll nun in der kommenden Nacht vom Weltraumbahnhof Cape Canaveral abheben. Das ist dann der 4. Startversuch. 3-mal war der Flug wegen technischer Probleme und wegen schlechten Wetters bereits verschoben worden. Ein drohendes Unwetter könnte aber auch den neuen Versuch vereiteln. Die Endeavour soll mit 7 Astronauten an Bord zur ISS fliegen.
Again, a couple of hours ago, liftoff is now set for 7:13 p.m. Eastern. CNN will bring it to you live. NASA scrubbed last month's launch after several lightning strikes near the launch pad. Those are the headlines on State of the Union.
Have a look, shall we? Because I think we've probably got some pictures. Hopefully they're live pictures. Of course, the preparations are actually taking place, and the launch is scheduled for, what is it now, just under 2 hours from now. Now, so far, of course, they've had to scrap 3 planned launches. First of all, it was all to do with leaks in the fuel pump, and then, of course, on Saturday, there was actually many lightning strikes that struck the area. Now, let me show you the forecast over the last few hours, because it has come down to the forecast in the last 24 hours. That's why it was scrapped on Saturday. But on Sunday, you can see here, certainly close over Florida, there have been quite a few showers and thunderstorms in the area over the last few hours, and that's not to say that we won't see some more over the coming few hours. You can see here quite a lot of rain expected, but there is the Space Center. So all these showers and thunderstorms are generally expected to be inland. Now, there's a 70% chance that the launch will take place, but we have got those thunderstorms around. And in actual fact, the primary concern for NASA is that there are any showers and thunderstorms. They can't be any closer than 37 kilometers or 23 miles from the actual shuttle landing facility. Of course, once they get up there are 7 astronauts. It's a 16-day mission, and they should be taking 5 planned spacewalks. But there is some fairly strong thunderstorms to the north of Florida. These will stay in the forecast as we head through Monday. It's all along this cold front as it swings south. We've got all the heat, of course, in the south, so some very unstable air, and that could give rise to some fairly significant thunderstorms.
Seals are all deflated, tied back, and that's exactly what they're doing now. They're inspecting the tile. I see Renee looking, and the tile's real critical around the hat.
Is a charm after 2 delays because of potentially dangerous fuel leaks and 1 because of a severe lightning storm. The Space Shuttle Endeavour is set to launch from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida just a little bit more than an hour from now. The astronauts are inside, support crew doing their business. So before the liftoff, we will have a live report. And then what they're going to be doing from our correspondent Andy Gallagher. Andy is in Florida, waiting and watching and hoping that this time it works. So, Andy, tell us just what's happening.
Well, I think collective fingers crossed at NASA. This is the 4th attempt to get Endeavour off the ground from launch pad 39B in Cape Canaveral. The first 2 times the launch was scrubbed because of serious fuel leaks, and then last night, on Saturday night, there were 11 lightning strikes on and around the shuttle. So far, the weather is looking good. They're saying a 70% chance of launch. The crew are now on board. The 7 astronauts are now on board, and they're bound for a 16-day mission. Now, if they do get off the ground in the next hour, they'll be delivering the last and final part of the Japanese laboratory known as Kibo. They'll also be building a platform in space for zero-gravity experiments. And interestingly, they'll be joining 6 crew members already on board the International Space Station, making it the most crowded since it was built. In fact, the most crowded place off the planet. 13 people in all will be on board the International Space Station over the next 2 weeks or so.
And Andy, there aren't that many space shuttle flights left. We're seeing a program coming to its end.
It really is a funny thing, Philippa, when you watch these go up. They've been going up for so long, and for the most of the time very successfully, that we kind of take it for granted at this point. But next year, the 3 remaining orbiters will be retired, to be replaced later on by possibly the Ares rocket. It hasn't yet been decided, but it really is the end of an era. There are something like 6 or 7 launches left, all of which are aimed at completing the International Space Station, a real race against time to get that finished before these ancient craft now, I think, are finally retired next year.
And as you were saying, Andy, you have got used to this happening, but are there still big crowds out there? Is it still an exciting thing to see this take off?
It is, I think, one of the most incredible experiences anybody can have. I mean, often you're sitting around for hours on end in the searing heat of Cape Canaveral, and then when it finally goes off, the noise and the sight of those 7 people being blasted across the out of the Earth's atmosphere is simply amazing. And there are people all up and down the Space Coast, as it's known. They travel from far and wide. I've spoken to many people on the occasions I've been there who are tremendously excited. It is part of the American dream. It is something that people are very eager to follow all the way.
Andy Gallagher, we'll hear from you in an hour's time. Thank you very much, live from Florida.
Will lightning strike twice and delay the shuttle launch? We are watching it very closely. Well, good morning.
Florida, it has been cancelled because of stormy weather in the area. We had got to just a few minutes to take off to the launch. This was the 4th attempt to launch the Space Shuttle Endeavour, and we'll have a little more for you on that a little later.
Florida. Now, there's already been 2 delays because of fuel leaks and one due to a severe lightning storm. And NASA was hoping the Shuttle Endeavour would get off the launch pad tonight. In fact, about a minute from now was the original liftoff time, but Mother Nature had different plans. Let's go to CNN's John Zarella, who's there at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And John, tell us exactly why the launch is a no-go.
Well, Christy, you know, if you look behind me here, it looks great out there. People at home and watching around the world are probably sitting there going, what's he talking about? Bad weather? Well, out to the west, we can see it, just thunderstorms all over out there, lightning within 20 miles of the landing site here at the Kennedy Space Center. And that's critical because if for some reason the shuttle had to make an emergency attempt to return here after launch to the Space Center, an emergency return to the landing site here, they want the skies to be perfectly clear, no rain, no thunderstorms, no lightning in the area. Well, that certainly wasn't the case. And just a few minutes ago, the Launch Control Mission Control gave the astronauts the word that they were no-go for tonight's launch.
We have postponed this evening's launch attempt for shuttle mission STS-127. Space Shuttle Endeavour was scheduled to launch at 7:13 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. But due to weather in the vicinity of Kennedy Space Center, that affected not only launch, but the potential for a return to launch site abort. Weather teams in Houston and at Kennedy Space Center were no-go for a launch, and therefore we declared a 24-hour turnaround and will attempt launch Monday at 6:51 and 24 seconds p.m. Eastern Daylight Time.
Now I'm joined by Katie Coleman, a veteran shuttle astronaut. She's flown twice, and Katie's actually preparing for a mission to the International Space Station, a long-duration flight. And she's actually going to be going up after the shuttle program officially ends. So you're going to be flying on a Soyuz rocket up to the space station. How long are you going for?
I'll be up there for 6 months.
6 months.
It's a great long time.
Boy, that is a long time. Before we get to that, I wanted to ask you, on your flights, the 2 that you've had, you've experienced these weather delays too, haven't you?
You know, we went during hurricane season, 7 slips over 30 days.
7?
There are members of my family still not speaking to me. You know, I will tell you that this is hard on the crew, and at the same time, it is definitely harder on the families. You know, they have bought tickets, they are down here, your uncles, your brothers, your sisters, you know, rental cars, the whole deal. And they all want to know, will it go tomorrow? You know, you wish you knew. It's hard on the families, and that makes it a little hard on the crew members as well, but they'll be ready tomorrow. They'll be up for it.
And you know, this mission is truly, well, an international mission. You've got astronauts and cosmonauts and 2 from the Canadian Space Agency, and
got a Belgian guy.
A Belgian guy.
Russians.
It's really
Japanese.
Koichi Wakata, who's up on the space station now, and and 13 people in space. It's going to get awfully crowded up there, isn't it?
You know, crowded to me implies that you might all be in a small space with not much room to really call your own. And that's actually, once they dock to the station, it's not the case. I mean, the station is huge now. Yeah. It is like bigger than one 747 and almost the size of 2 inside. And so you've got 13 people, but a lot of real estate. It's a very complex mission, though, probably our most complex. so many robotic arm operations coordinated with spacewalking operations, you know, down in the payload bay, somebody's taking covers off, you know, up on the Kibo module.
And the arms are working at the same time.
Absolutely.
Everything is, yeah.
So a lot of coordination, I would say communication will be key. In terms of actually being squished in one place, probably not the case.
Not so bad. And,
Nope.
and 5 spacewalks on the mission. And of course, the primary focus of this is to install literally a porch on the Japanese laboratory, the Kibo laboratory, for the use for experiments that need to be exposed to space, right?
Right. I mean, so I think that it's not having a porch is one thing, it's what it's for, and it's because our space station is out in space. It gives us the option of doing experiments that can only be done outside the Earth's atmosphere.
Well, we're hoping, Christy, that tomorrow will be the day to go, and you know, it would be nice to have that porch up in space. You kind of relax up there and watch the stars and all. That would be nice if the astronauts could do that, but not the case. But Christy, again, tomorrow night, 6:51 p.m. Eastern time here in Florida. Hopefully the thunderstorms will stay away. Christy?
Yeah, hopefully, and fingers crossed, no more delays. John Zarella, thank you very much for that. Now, our own Jenny Harrison, she's watching weather conditions, and hopefully will tell us what they'll be like for tomorrow night's new scheduled launch. Jenny.
Well, hello to you, Christine. You know what, I have to tell you that in actual fact, Sunday, today was the better day of the next few. I can show you first of all the radar behind me, and you can see in the last few hours we have had this flurry of activity, these showers and these thunderstorms, and of course far too close to the actual launch site to be safe. Now, when it comes to being safe, we can't have any activity, any thunderstorms or even showers. A lot of this is to do with the crosswinds. Can't have anything that close within 37 kilometres, which is about 23 miles or 20 nautical miles, close to the actual launch site. Now, in actual fact, as we head off into Monday, we've got some very severe thunderstorms working their way across the south and the southeast, but all the moisture is being pumped up from the Gulf. So it is quite possible, as I say, that we are going to see more in the way of those scattered thunderstorms. And look at the forecast. I'm not sure, a lot of this is being covered up, I think, by a little bug at the bottom there, but what you can see is a lot of blue across in Florida through Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and a lot of that again is going to be these scattered showers and thunderstorms. So Christy, at the moment, I guess it's a case of wait and see tomorrow again when it's closer to the time.
Endeavour, die US-Raumfähre, steht noch immer am Startplatz in Cape Canaveral. Der Start musste erneut verschoben werden. Dazu gleich mehr, aber vorher andere Nachrichten dieses Morgens. Auch der 4. Anlauf zum Start der US-Raumfähre endete mit einem Fehlschlag. Wegen eines Gewitters konnte der Shuttle in der Nacht nicht abheben. Bereits zuvor musste der Countdown 3-mal innerhalb eines Monats abgebrochen werden.
Die 7 Astronauten haben längst ihre Positionen eingenommen. Mehr als 3 Stunden banges Warten. Unmittelbar vor dem geplanten Start dann die Entscheidung aus der NASA-Zentrale in Houston. Kommando zurück, alle müssen wieder aussteigen.
Houston flight is no go at this time for RTLS weather.
Heißt so viel wie schlechtes Wetter ist der Grund für die Absage wieder einmal. Auch wenn es auf den Bildern vom Weltraumbahnhof Cape Canaveral nicht unbedingt so aussieht. Aber eine heranziehende Gewitterfront lässt das Risiko zu groß erscheinen. Ähnlich wie am Vortag, als Blitze in die Startrampe einschlugen. Zuvor war der Start schon 2-mal wegen eines Tanklecks verschoben worden. Nächster Versuch ist jetzt kommende Nacht 0:51 Uhr deutscher Zeit. Dann soll es endlich klappen, damit die Endeavour die letzten Teile für das japanische Forschungslabor Kibo zur internationalen Raumstation ISS bringen kann. 16 Tage soll die Mission dauern, doch vorerst heißt es weiter warten.
Mehrere Blitzeinschläge den Start verhindert. Kommende Nacht will die NASA es noch einmal versuchen. Im Juni konnte die Endeavour 2-mal wegen eines Lecks in einer Wasserstoffleitung nicht abheben. Die 7 Besatzungsmitglieder der Endeavour sollen die letzten Teile eines Forschungslabors zur internationalen Raumstation ISS bringen.
In probability, it looks like only about a 40% chance, 28 degrees for that temperature, and again, watching out for those showers and storms. We've also been
away from an important space shuttle launch or minutes away from yet another delay. The astronauts are on board right now, but will the weather cooperate? And as Governor's live pictures of the space shuttle Endeavour, it's fueled up, the crew is on board, all systems are ready to go. Now all it needs is for nature to cooperate. Bad weather could still scrub this important launch once again. Let's get the latest from CNN's John Zarella. He's over at the Kennedy Space Center for us. Look up in the sky, John. Is it clear, not clear? What's going on?
Well, it's overcast, Wolf. There's a big thunderstorm to the south, and now they're looking at another one to the north of us that may impact that landing facility just in case there were an emergency and they had to come back here. So they're by no means out of the woods with the weather yet. As soon as they clear one storm, it seems like another one pops up. But about 2 hours ago, the crew, all smiling again, went out to the launch pad, got on board the space shuttle. They left the operations and checkout building, led by Commander Mark Polanski, making his veteran of 2 shuttle flights, making his 3rd shuttle flight. Julie Payette on board as well, Canadian Space Agency astronaut. And they're certainly ready to go. Endeavour's going on a 16-day mission once they get off the ground to the International Space Station. You know what's interesting, Wolf? When they get up there, between the 7 astronauts on the shuttle and the 6 on board of the International Space Station, there are going to be 13 people in space, the most ever, 5 different nationalities, a real international crew, Russian, Belgian, Canadian, U.S., and Japanese astronauts. So a real international cooperative mission once they get Endeavour off the ground. The only issue that could possibly at this point hold them up, the weather, and that is still iffy at best. But the vehicle is performing well. There are no issues with the shuttle Endeavour. Wolf?
It's an amazing thing, and no matter how many times you've seen that launch, to just see it, and we'll have live coverage, obviously, if in fact it takes off, and we're hoping that the weather cooperates. You know exactly 1 week from today, John, what we're all going to be remembering?
Yeah, it's going to be the 40th anniversary of the Apollo moon landing. Apollo 11, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, the first 2 human beings to set foot on another world. 40 years, Wolf. It is awfully hard to believe. And you know they're going to have a big celebration here this week on the 16th to mark the date of the launch. And then in Washington, up at the Air and Space Museum, another big celebration on the 20th of the month, next Monday. So some big festivities planned. Hard to believe. 40 years since the first moon landing.
Yeah, we're going to have extensive coverage right here in the Situation Room 1 week from today, because we'll mark that exact second that man actually landed on the moon. I want you to stand by, John, because we're going to see if this shuttle Endeavour actually takes off. We're going to check in with our severe weather expert, Chad Myers, who's taking a closer look at the weather. They've only got a few minutes to make their mind up. Chad,
Yes.
what are we seeing?
You know, it's a lot better than I thought it would be this time of year. There's no guarantee trying to launch a shuttle in the summer in Florida. You could pick a drier place like maybe Arizona or something. But right here, 39A, 39B, the shuttle is right there. The closest shower is about 20 miles north of there. So at least that's some good news. We have been watching showers pop up all day long, especially south and east of it. But those storms have been moving into the ocean. And so has that cell been moving to the ocean. The spot we're looking for? Right there. And so far, we're between storms. So far, so good. They're on a hold. They won't even get out of the hold for another about 40 minutes or so, maybe 35 minutes. And we'll be here when it happens. Wolf?
We'll watch. Let's hope for the best. All right. Thanks very much. President Obama and the work from the launch site, CNN's John Zarella is keeping one eye on the shuttle, another eye on the weather. How much time is there before they have to make a decision to either go or no go, John?
Well, they'll come out of this built-in hold in about 15, 16 minutes, and by then they'll have to make a decision on whether they're going to continue with the countdown or go ahead and scrub for the day. And, you know, everybody's probably asking, well, it looks great out there behind me. The weather looks pretty good. The shuttle Endeavour behind me there. But if Dominic Swan, our cameraman, can pan off here to my right, you can see that's a big active thunderstorm. That's the corner of the vehicle assembly building you see there, and it is an active storm with lightning and thunder, and it is well within the range that is no-go. So at this point, they are red for violating the launch commit criteria. They're saying that that storm is moving so slowly, Wolf, it may not clear the area in time for them to launch today. And no decision has yet been made on whether they will go again tomorrow, try again tomorrow. Couple reasons. The weather's not expected to be much better tomorrow, and they've already tanked that giant external tank 2 days in a row, and they don't like to do it 3 days in a row. They like to take a day off to replenish that liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen. So it's question mark whether they would even try to go tomorrow, Wolf. And if they don't go tomorrow, they can't go until the 27th of the month, so they have to stand down for a couple more weeks.
So basically what I hear you saying, John, is we should know very, very soon whether this is a launch or no launch?
Yeah, I would think in the next 10 minutes or so at the most, we should know whether they're going to continue with this countdown or call it a day.
All right, well, the launch is, you see the 22 minutes and 5 seconds, 4 seconds, 3 seconds. We'll watch it together with you. Stay in close touch with us. John Zarella's on the scene, and we'll get back to him. Let's move on. Minutes away from a decision whether it could still scrub it or we could see the launch. Breaking news involving the Space Shuttle Endeavour. Let's go to our man on the scene, John Zarella. They've just made a decision.
That's right, Wolf. It is no-go today due to the weather here at the Kennedy Space Center. They thought they'd get a break. The big storm to the south cleared, but then this big thunderstorm over here will swing around and show you popped up anvil clouds, ceilings too high, cloud to ground lightning, too much lightning in the area. So based on the constraints with this weather, the launch director made the decision after polling the team. He said, look, we made a valiant effort. We got everything ready. The vehicle was ready to go, but the weather did not, again, cooperate. So this, again, another delay in the launch of the Shuttle Endeavour. No decision yet on whether they will try tomorrow. I heard them also mention that they might even try Wednesday, although I had heard that that was not an option earlier. But at this point, we are still waiting to see what the decision is on when they will go. Again, if they do go tomorrow, it would be a 6:25 p.m. Eastern Time attempt to lift off, Wolf. But again, today, the news here, not good at the Kennedy Space Center. The Shuttle Endeavour, once again, stuck on the ground due to weather. Wolf?
All right, stand by for a moment, John. Chad Myers is our severe weather expert. Can you look ahead 24 hours, Chad, and give us an assessment whether it looks like more of the same, better, worse?
Doesn't your mom still live in Florida, Wolf?
Yes, she does.
Did she tell you that it rains almost every afternoon in Florida in the summer?
Yep.
Yeah, it does, and that's what we're at today here. This is the storm, one small storm, less than 10 miles away. It was 116 lightning strikes in the past hour for that storm. I think tomorrow is a better day. I truly do. But you're asking yourself, maybe, why can't they just wait an hour? Because the shuttle takes off from here, and the space station catches it. If you wait too long, the space station's far, far away. The shuttle would never be able to get there. And so that's why these small, small windows, it's like playing catch with a ball. One person's got to be there, and the gloves have got to be there before the ball gets there as well. So
let me ask John Zarella a quick question, Chad. Thank you, John. Why is it so dangerous for a shuttle, a huge Endeavour mission like this one, to take off with a little rain and little clouds? Why is that such a big deal?
You know what, Wolf? There's something that they call trigger lightning, and I've seen it actually hit a couple of expendable rockets that took off from here. In fact, Apollo 12 was hit twice by lightning on the way into orbit. They survived those lightning strikes, but it was awful scary. And I did see an expendable rocket that actually blew up after it was hit by lightning. They do not want to literally induce a lightning strike when you lift off with a massive vehicle like this. It can induce what's called trigger lightning, and that is not a good thing. So anywhere within 10 miles of the launch pad, they will not launch if there's active lightning. And then you've got the larger circumference, 20 miles, within 20 miles of that landing site, in case they would have to come back here. They don't want to have to fly back into a thunderstorm in case of an emergency. Wolf?
All right, excellent explanation, as usual. John Zarella on the scene for us. Chad Myers, thanks very much. If it does take off tomorrow, the launch, 6:25 p.m. Eastern, you'll see it live here in the Situation Room.
Fähre Endeavour reist nicht ab. Auch der 5. Startanlauf endete mit einem Fehlschlag. Wegen einer Schlechtwetterfront konnte der Shuttle nicht zur internationalen Raumstation ISS abheben. Ein Gewitter und ein Sandsturm hatten sich bis auf wenige Kilometer dem Weltraumbahnhof Cape Canaveral genähert. Die 7 Astronauten hier bei den Startvorbereitungen sollen ein japanisches Forschungslabor fertigstellen. Ursprünglich hatte die Endeavour bereits vor einem Monat abheben sollen.
What are the chances they'll get it off the ground today? We'll have a live report. Endeavour is fueled up. NASA is hoping to launch the space shuttle in a couple of hours. Well, there were technical problems and bad weather that caused 5 earlier launch attempts to be scrubbed. But what about today? What are the chances? John Zarella is at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, where Endeavour is once again getting ready to blast off. So Are we going to see a successful launch today, John?
Well, Hala, NASA will once again endeavor to get Endeavour off the ground here at the Kennedy Space Center out at Launch Pad 39A. The astronauts are suited up. They are inside the vehicle, and NASA's continuing the countdown towards a launch at 6:03 p.m. Eastern time here in Florida. Of course, we've already had some bad weather here earlier today. Some photographs shot earlier this afternoon by our engineer here, Max Lewis, showing the dark thunder clouds over the vehicle assembly building and the adjacent area here around the Kennedy Space Center. Lightning and thunder was in the area again, and some video from NASA shot of the launch pad, and you can certainly see the shuttle surrounded by the dark clouds and the bad weather. A lot of that has cleared off, although it is still quite overcast here, and the meteorologists are saying that they expect that much of this weather should migrate inland, away from the Kennedy Space Center today, as opposed to what's happened the last few days, where the weather migrated back towards the coast and literally right over top of us, so they were unable to attempt a launch here. Now, the astronauts, again, as I said, they're on board the vehicle. They're getting ready for the liftoff. They've been out there now just a little while. They suited up earlier today, got in their flight suits. They left the operations and checkout building, where, of course, they once again did the traditional wave before they boarded the Astro bus to head out to the launch pad and get on board Endeavour. Now, if they get off the ground today, and hopefully that will take place, they'll begin a 16-day mission to the International Space Station. You know, Hala, this is really a big group that's going up. You've got 7 astronauts going up, and there are 6 people on board the International Space Station. So you literally have 13 people in space, more than at any time, and it is an absolutely international cast. You've got U.S. astronauts, Russian cosmonauts, 2 Canadian astronauts, a Belgian astronaut, and a Japanese astronaut as well. So it is really what the International Space Station program was supposed to be about. International cooperation in space, and really for the first time in the history of the International Space Station, you're really going to see that on this mission, which is a building mission once again, trying to finish up the International Space Station before the Space Shuttle program ends in September of 2010. And again, right now, meteorologists I talked to here said they're pretty confident, more confident than they have been the last few days, that they'll be able to get Endeavour off the ground.
Right. Well, let's hope it's a success for them, if only because these astronauts must be sick and tired of waving every day.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's hope that the launch happens today and is successful. Thank you very much, John Zarella in Florida. Let's get the latest weather conditions ahead of the launch. Guillermo Arduino joins us now from the International Weather Center. And you heard John Zarella there say that meteorologists are pretty confident that this launch is going to happen.
I don't know. Well, John also said that the winds, the storms were moving inland, contrary to what yesterday, because the winds are coming here north-northeast, so they're pushing inwards all the action. At the same time, and I think my mic is acting up, so I'm not going to move much. But at the same time, here, Cape Canaveral in the area sees bad weather, something that John mentioned. It's summertime. It always happens. It's unpredictable. And we see also those cells around. I think that we have to give it a shot. I would say no. But here, calling for 60% chance of chances for this launch. I don't know.
Isn't that what we had yesterday?
Yesterday we had the same, yes.
Yeah.
I think that this is such complicated and costly and risky mission that even at a very close storm, they will not do it. So this is the time of the year. Well, what else can I say?
That's the big question. It's less than an hour to go before we're expecting to get some kind of a firm answer on all of this. You know where this sits right now? 40 years ago, another spacecraft sat. It was about twice as tall, the Saturn missile that took the astronauts to the moon. Much more on that coming up tomorrow, but at the same time, we're worried, we're wondering what's going to happen with this mission. And we talked with John Zarella, who gave us a little bit of the inside, the backstory on what do the astronauts do, what do the correspondents do when everything seems to be left on hold. You got that night launch coming up, but it's been just delay after delay after delay. How tough is that? Not only on you and the other news correspondents, but it's got to be tough on the astronauts.
Yeah, you know, I think we have the easiest job, although it is miserable hot out here in, you know, the dead of summer in Florida. It's 100 degrees up here and thunderstorms, you know, off to the west of us. We can hear them rumbling, some lightning. And, of course, the weather delays 3 days in a row forced them to delay the launch. And weather is iffy for the launch again today. But you're right. The astronauts, you know, they get up, they get ready. They have to get dressed, they have their breakfast, their lunch, they wait for the weather briefings, and then they come out to the pad. And of course, you know, they were delayed twice for hydrogen leaks before the weather issues ever cropped up. So this is going on the 6th attempt to launch Endeavour, which is right on the record number for any shuttle of the last 127 in the history of the shuttle program. You don't think of it, but the families and their friends who all come down here for the launches, they want to see it get off the ground, and of course there's that nervous energy, concern as well. Anytime a family member or loved one's getting on top of a rocket and going to lift off in space, and then it's delayed, and there's that emotional letdown. And then some of them can't stay, and they have to go back home.
I guess they learn not to complain about it because obviously you got a hydrogen leak. I mean, safety has to come first, but the weather is just as threatening.
Yeah, it's Florida. That's the way it goes. You try in the summertime, and these are the obstacles you run into. You know, and because of the launch plane and the fact you got to get up to catch up to the International Space Station, it's not like they can move the time of the launch in order to go earlier in the day or later in the day. There's a certain launch window based on where the shuttle launches from, where the International Space Station is overhead, in order to be able to actually get in orbit and catch up to the space station. So, you know, it's just one of the things they have to deal with, and that's just the way it goes. You know, here's an interesting one. You're talking about the crews. One thing they do, Jim, is they eat pretty well when they're sitting here. So, you know, these scrubs, they probably put on a little weight waiting for the launch. For lunch, for instance, the last couple of days, for Dave, for instance, let me look. Commander Mark Polanski, he had a BLT with French fries. But Chris Cassidy, who's a former Navy SEAL, he had the tenderloin steak and mashed potatoes for lunch. So did Tim Copra, another one of the mission specialists. He had a tenderloin steak as well. So, you know, they're eating pretty well. Julie Payette had the grilled cheese sandwich. Doug Hurley, the pilot, he had the cheeseburger. So they do eat pretty well while they're sitting waiting. That was for lunch. They had blueberry pancakes for breakfast.
There's our John Zarella waiting in the steamy heat of Florida. Thanks, John.
Usually prepared about a year and a half for these missions, and while we're frustrated when we get a launch delay, you know, we keep the big picture in mind, and we know that eventually the weather will clear, the skies will part, and it'll be our turn, as it looks like it is the turn for the crew of STS-127 here today.
2 minutes and 50 seconds to go. Chris, I want to just listen to NASA Selecta for just a moment, a few seconds, hear what they're saying.
And we're completing the purge of the shuttle main engines.
All right. Well, that's that. Let's bring back Chris Ferguson himself, and an Endeavour astronaut. John Zarella is with us as well. John, I know you have a question you want to ask Chris at a sensitive moment, a moment like this.
Yeah, you know, Chris, I was thinking a couple of things. You were commander of the rescue shuttle, if I'm not mistaken, that would have had to go and rescue the crew of Atlantis on the Hubble mission. So you're not far from here just a couple of months ago. You know, God forbid anything had gone wrong. But right now, you know, what goes through your mind as the commander at this point? You're now inside of a minute and a half. What are you doing right now?
Well, you know, a lot of folks ask, hey, what do you think in a couple moments leading up to launch? And, you know, the truth be told, you're very preoccupied with monitoring not only the health of the vehicle and the systems that you're in charge of, but, you know, making sure the crew's prepared and, you know, monitoring their status as well. And you're right. This was the rescue vehicle, Endeavour was. So it spent a fair amount of time outdoors. It was going to be the STS-400 rescue vehicle to launch on the northern pad. Once that was released, after the Hubble crew returned successfully to Earth, they moved Endeavour to the southern pad there, where it stood in preparation for 127's launch. And you know, we're all fortunate that we did what we did, and we covered that launch well, and we didn't need to do it.
Chris Ferguson is joining us under a minute right now before this launch. John Zarella's on the scene. You know what? Let's listen in and see these final seconds as we get ready to see the Endeavour launch.
Engines are ready to start. The booster joint heaters are being deactivated at this time. T-minus 50 seconds. We're transferring to orbital internal power. Endeavour is now running off of its 3 onboard fuel cells. Coming up on a go for auto sequence start at T-minus 31 seconds.
TLS is go for auto sequence start.
T-minus 27 seconds and counting. Endeavour's onboard computers have primary control of all the vehicle's critical functions. T-minus 18 seconds.
15.
The sound suppression water system has been activated, protecting Endeavour and the launch pad from acoustical energy. We're go for main engine start. We have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Endeavour, completing Kibo and fulfilling Japan's hope for an out-of-this-world space laboratory.
Houston, Endeavour, roll program.
Roger, roll, Endeavour.
This is Mission Control Houston. Endeavour's roll maneuver is being completed. It's now going into a heads-down position on track for its flight to the International Space Station. Flying at 400 miles per hour, 1 mile in altitude and 7 miles downrange already from the Kennedy Space Center. Endeavour's engines were throttling down as the orbiter passes through the area of maximum pressure on the vehicle, now 50 seconds into the flight.
Endeavour, go at throttle up.
Go at throttle up.
The 3 engines on board are throttling back up. Endeavour flying at 1,100 miles per hour, 10 miles in altitude, and 10 miles downrange. At liftoff, the fully fueled shuttle, boosters, and external tank weighed 4.5 million pounds. The total thrust at launch was 6,425,000 pounds. 1 minute, 33 seconds into the flight, Endeavour flying at 1,900 miles per hour, 17 miles in altitude, and 16 miles downrange. All systems continue to function well. Endeavour has 3 good main engines, 3 good power-generating fuel cells, and 3 good auxiliary power units for the hydraulic system. We'll be standing by for burnout and separation of the solid rocket boosters. Combined, the twin boosters provide 5.3 million pounds of thrust to propel the orbiter towards space.
All right, there it is. The rocket boosters just separated from the Endeavour. It's moving towards space right now, about 2 minutes and 20 seconds as you hear into this flight. It looks like everything is going the way it's supposed to go right now. Craig Ferguson, himself an astronaut, the former commander of the Endeavour, is joining us on the phone, as is John Zarella, our correspondent, who's been covering these space missions for a long, long time. Chris Ferguson, I should say. Chris, so far so good. Looks like all systems go.
Yeah, this is great news. Absolutely. We're glad to see him off the pad. There you can see one of the views looking down from the external tank at the bottom of the orbiter. Of course, that's a new view that we've added since Columbia, just to inspect for any acid debris that may fall off the tank. But so far, everything looks great.
Chris, the key is to make sure that there is no debris that could knock off even a tiny little piece of the Endeavour of the space shuttle. Is that right?
Absolutely, Wolf. As you know, we use very cold propellants inside that external tank. They tend to form ice in the humid environment in and around Florida. So we're very conscientious of ice that may come off, or perhaps even the insulating foam that surrounds the external tank itself. So that camera right there provides just an excellent view overall of what may come off the external tank and pass in or around the shuttle itself.
John Zarella's watching all of this unfold. You've seen a lot of these space shuttles take off. This is So far a beauty, at least it looks like that to me. John, what do you think?
Yeah, you know, and if as Commander Ferguson was saying, you're looking down from the external tank, the big orange cylinder down there, and it looks like it's, you know, where the connections are to the shuttle, to the Space Shuttle Endeavour. You know, we're coming up on the next major milestone is MECO, main engine cutoff at 8 minutes. And what we would see then is literally the separation of the shuttle from that external tank. And you'll actually see that when it happens. That's the next major milestone. They'll be traveling more than 17,000 miles an hour. And at that point, Endeavour will be in space. And that'll come, as I'm sure Commander Ferguson can verify, about 8 minutes in when you have MECO, main engine cutoff.
So
right now
closer
they're
to the
flying
8-minute mark.
uphill, as they say. Yeah, we're at 4:48 on 5 minutes, coming up on 5 minutes in. So another 3 minutes of powered flight on those 3 main engines that are firing now. And then you'll have, again, main engine cutoff. The tank, which will fall away, is what fuels those main engines. So once the tank is gone, that's it. No more power from those main engines. But at that point, the Shuttle Endeavour and the 7-member crew will actually be in space. And this is, you know, the 23rd flight of the Shuttle Endeavour and the 29th flight to the International Space Station of a space shuttle. You know, and as they're winding down the space shuttle program here, you're looking at 7 flights to go now after this liftoff to complete the International Space Station before September 2010, which is the kind of soft cutoff date, but a cutoff date nonetheless for the space shuttle program to come to an end. Wolf?
Yeah, that's supposed to be the last one. We'll see if, in fact, that is the case. Chris Ferguson, you were the commander of the Endeavour the last time it took off back in November of last year. All these steps that are going on right now, are they computerized? Do they just happen automatically? Or does the commander and his team, are they pushing all sorts of buttons right now?
No, these are all pre-programmed actions. You can see in that camera that looks back over the orbiter, you see the shadow passing across the bottom. That's actually the orbiter performing a pre-programmed roll to what we call the heads-up attitude. And the reason we do this is to regain, or should I say acquire, satellite communication. Up to this point, we're communicating through one of the ground sites in Florida, but we roll to the heads-up attitude because we're about to hand the communications and data transfer over through a satellite, a teacher satellite in geosynchronous orbiter. So that's why that roll to heads-up. And you may have also seen some of this video that we're seeing from the external tank will begin to get a little teary, a little scratchy because those antennas are beginning to approach the horizon, and we actually begin to lose some of the communication from them. But we'll probably keep this external tank antenna here up through main engine cutoff and into perhaps even darkness.
I don't know if you saw it, but it looked like a couple times there was either some debris or some ice that seemed to move there. Chris Ferguson, did you notice anything unusual, or is that just my imagination?
You may have seen something, Wolf. It's not uncommon to see a little a speck or two fly by. We have very well-trained debris analysis teams who analyze this video, and they'll let us know whether it's anything to be concerned of. You know, we're really concerned with kind of a very sensitive period of time there that occurs somewhere between 2 and 3 minutes after launch. It's kind of the debris sensitivity period, if you were, such that that debris could build up enough relative velocity to do any damage. So, but there's a lot of criteria to meet, and we'll know tomorrow, I'm sure, if there's anything of concern. But to just answer your question, I did not see anything.
And did you point out earlier that this new shot that we have from the camera that's up there, that was designed to be able to help NASA appreciate if, in fact, there was any dangerous debris that might have chipped off parts of the space shuttle?
Absolutely, Wolf. This was added post the post-Columbia time frame, and we've also added a few other cameras on the solid rocket boosters. But they're recorded on board, so of course we don't get that video back until after we retrieve those boosters and bring them back to Florida. So there are several more monitoring techniques to just clear the orbiter, make sure that we haven't incurred any damage. So we're actually getting close to MECO here.
Yeah, well, explain what MECO is to our viewers who aren't familiar with the term.
Sure, it's MECO. It stands for main engine cutoff. It occurs a little bit after 8 minutes of powered flight when the engines shut themselves down, and basically we've exhausted the propellant and we've reached the orbital velocity. So John was saying, Yeah, it's about 5 miles per second. There you see the, we've actually jettisoned the external tank, and we're beginning the separation maneuver here.
What happens to that tank after it's separated?
It's actually not long for the world, Wolf. It's going to re-enter the atmosphere very shortly, and it's going to end up in the Pacific Ocean, in about 15 or 20 minutes.
Already in the Pacific? It took off just the Atlantic. It's already going to be in the Pacific Ocean, you're saying?
Yeah, well, it's got a little traveling to do across Europe, across the Indian Ocean, but it'll re-enter the atmosphere very shortly here. And, of course, in order to keep the shuttle into orbit, we'll light what's called the orbital maneuvering engines here in about another half hour or so, and they'll circularize the orbiter to keep it in space.
How long before the space shuttle actually gets to the International Space Station?
Well, the crew is going to go to bed here shortly, in about 6 hours or so. Of course, they have a lot of business to attend to convert that orbiter into a spacecraft that can be used in space. They have to stow their suits and stow the seats. Tomorrow they'll wake up and they're going to do a complete head-to-toe inspection using that large inspection boom to take a real good look over the leading edges and the bottom of the orbiter to make sure we didn't incur any damage. And then finally, on the third day, we're going to wake up and we get right into what we call the rendezvous checklist. It's a long series of programmed and manual maneuvers to bring the orbiter into close proximity to the space station. So in about 48 hours' time, on what we call Flight Day 3, their third full day in space.
Chris, I want to show you, we've got the video of what we suspected was some debris, and we've highlighted it. Watch the screen and tell us if you think that was anything serious or not so serious. It just flashed right by. We'll cue it up and we'll show it to our viewers again.
Yeah, well, if I'm not going to be able to comment on it, I'm sorry. I'm looking at NASA TV.
Oh, so you're not seeing the CNN right now?
That's true.
John Zarella, are you seeing CNN? Did you see what we just saw? There it is, right there.
I'm seeing NASA TV.
You're seeing NASA TV too. All right, so never mind.
Yeah, I did see it. I did see it, Wolf, as you described it. I saw it when it happened in real time, and I kind of saw, I kind of saw the same thing. That yeah, right there, something going by, and I did see that same thing and said, what's that? But looked like little flakes or specks that were right there. It could have been pieces of ice, but I wouldn't want to speculate it. If I'm sure at the post-launch news conference coming up, we may get some questions about exactly what that might have been that went by. Could have been a reflection. It looks like it's a reflection, not anything that's actually hitting the vehicle, but something that's along the side. It almost looks as if that's a reflection.
Yeah, we've been replaying it. I don't want our viewers to think that it's happened 10 times. It's the same piece of video. It's in a loop, and we've been replaying it to try to appreciate what exactly it was. We're hoping it was obviously nothing. And at what point, John, do they have that post-launch news conference when the NASA authorities will be able to explain what's going on?
It should come up in about 90 minutes. Within an hour to 90 minutes after after liftoff, they'll hold the post-launch newser, and I'm sure that question's going to be asked. And they may well say, look, as Commander Ferguson was saying, we're going to have to analyze that video, take a look at that before we can tell you what that is. And then they'll look from the other camera angles that they have, some of the video that's stored that'll have to be downlinked. I think Commander Ferguson was mentioning, too, they've got camera, on the boosters, but that was long after the boosters were gone. But they'll have other camera angles they'll be able to look at as well that were added post-Columbia as well, in order to get a handle on what, if anything, that was. Wolf?
All right, thanks very much, John Zarella, watching this for us. Chris Ferguson, thank you to you as well. We're going to stay in close touch with you and with John. So far, everything looks good. We'll try to get a better appreciation of what, if anything, that little looked like some debris or ice that was flashing across the space shuttle Endeavour. We'll try to figure out if it was anything significant or not, but we'll continue to stay on top of this story. Thanks to both of you guys. Deeply appreciate it. There's
US-Raumfähre Endeavour konnte kurz nach Mitternacht vom Weltraumbahnhof Cape Canaveral zur internationalen Raumstation ISS starten. Das war jetzt der 6. Versuch und die NASA ist erleichtert, nicht zuletzt, weil jeder abgebrochene Start sie $1 Million kostet. Und irgendwie passt der heutige Start auch historisch gesehen ganz hervorragend, denn auf den Tag genau vor 40 Jahren, am 16. Juli 1969, startete die Apollo 11-Besatzung ins All mit dem Ziel Landung auf dem Mond.
Die neuesten Bilder vom Mond, aufgenommen von der unbemannten US-Sonde La Crosse, die seit einem Monat um den Erdtrabanten kreist, um eine Mondmission vorzubereiten. Eindrücke von Ruhe und Frieden im All. Als US-Präsident John F. Kennedy sein Mondprogramm am 12. September 1962 vorstellt, beherrscht der Kalte Krieg die Welt. Die UdSSR hat im orbitalen Wettrüsten die Nase vorn. Die westliche Supermacht USA muss um ihre Führungsrolle fürchten. Wir haben uns entschieden, in diesem Jahrzehnt zum Mond zu fliegen, gibt sich Kennedy dennoch kämpferisch. Nicht, weil es einfach ist, sondern weil es schwierig ist. Viele der frühen Versuche der Weltraumbehörde NASA scheitern allerdings kläglich. Schließlich dauert es 7 lange Jahre und kostet 25 Milliarden $, bis Apollo 11 am 16. Juli 1969 Richtung Mond startet. Gut 3 Tage reisen die beiden Astronauten dorthin, wo noch niemand vor ihnen einen Fuß hingesetzt hat. Die Mondlandung wird zu einem weltweiten Medienspektakel. 500 Millionen Menschen bestaunen die Live-Übertragung und hören dann den Satz, den heute jeder kennt.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Ein kleiner Schritt für einen Menschen, ein gigantischer Schritt für die Menschheit. Mit diesen Worten kommentiert Neil Armstrong seinen Sprung auf die Mondoberfläche. Ihm und seinem Kameraden Buzz Aldrin folgen noch weitere 10 Astronauten. Inzwischen sind allerdings 37 Jahre vergangen, seit es den letzten Mann auf den Mond verschlagen hat. Viele Raumfahrtnationen planen derzeit jedoch neue Stationen. Stolz und selbstbewusst zeigt zum Beispiel die NASA, wie ihre Basis einmal aussehen wird. Schon 2018 sollen Amerikaner wieder regelmäßig zum Mond fliegen. Denn der Mond könnte einmal wichtig werden als Zwischenstopp für Raumflüge auf den Mars und andere Planeten in ferner Zukunft, wenn aus Science-Fiction-Träumen irgendwann einmal Realität werden sollte.
Yesterday, the dramatic liftoff of the Shuttle Endeavour. Today, some concern about foam insulation from the external fuel tank hitting the shuttle. Let's bring in our severe weather analyst, Chad Myers. He's over at the CNN Center. Chad, what are they saying about potential damage? We saw it take off yesterday. We saw some debris.
We saw an awful lot of debris, Wolf, and here are one of the pictures here. This is the picture that I really want to get to because it's been going around the blogs. Look at all of the debris pieces here coming off of the external tank. But this happened 6 minutes into the flight. Why does that matter? Because 6 minutes into the flight, Wolf, there's very little atmosphere up there, and there's very little drag on those pieces, so they're not going very fast. The exact opposite happens down at the surface. When you lose some pieces or ice comes off the external tank, down here, this thing's only going 20 miles per hour. Doesn't matter if it hits. It's in between. It's this time right here that matters the most when it's going and accelerating through the atmosphere. At some point, right through here, you're going to see what's called a pileus cap right there, going through the top of what would be the top of a thunderstorm, if there were a thunderstorm there. There was not, thank goodness. But this is the area of maximum drag. That drag will pick these pieces up and throw those pieces into the side of the orbiter, or worse, into the wing of the orbiter. That happened a couple of times, but they've had the arm out all day long. This arm comes out of the orbiter, it looks at what's going on here, and they have been able to determine that so far, none of these scuffs or gouges are significant enough to, one, abort the mission and bring up another shuttle, or even for that matter, worry about it at this point. They are going to flip the shuttle over as it approaches the space station, take 300 pictures of the bottom of the shuttle to see if it really is okay.
Let's hope it certainly is. All right, Chad, excellent explanation. Thank you very much. Spectacular images of man's first landing on the moon are missing. NASA can't find them. And we asked CNN's Tom Foreman to come into the Situation Room and tell us what's going on. We're getting ready on Monday, the 40th anniversary of man landing on the moon. There were some great pictures that are what, gone?
Yeah, missing. Yeah, mislaid. Let's say they're not gone entirely. But 40 years ago today, they blasted off. You remember that extraordinary moment? What a thrill that was. And these really are These are the images that I think, if you study history, long after all of us are gone, hundreds of years from now when the presidents' names are just dusty names in books, these will be the moments that will be remembered. And there's a very important missing link in these pictures right now.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
It's the iconic image of our efforts to explore space. And now, as we approach the 40th anniversary of man's first visit to the moon, NASA has restored and enhanced the original grainy black and white images, including that one that riveted the planet.
Oh, that looks beautiful from here, Neil.
Astronaut Neil Armstrong setting foot on the lunar surface on July 20th, 1969. The new high-definition video is an improvement over the original, but NASA officials believe that somewhere out there is video that could take our breath away. Images like this, but sharper and clearer than anything seen before. The problem is, no one knows where it is.
And liftoff of Endeavour.
Regular shuttle missions and the crisp color images they transmit have space fans a little spoiled. We forget just how complicated it was to transmit pictures from space to Earth in 1969. Here is how it worked. A small camera built into Apollo 11 scanned the lunar landing in a unique format unsuitable for regular TV. Those images were transmitted to tracking stations in Southeast Australia and California's Mojave Desert, where they were converted to a standard format and sent on to Houston, losing picture quality every step of the way. But veterans of the Apollo mission recently reminded NASA that technicians at both ground stations recorded the transmissions onto special tapes, which, if converted now with modern technology, would produce the highest quality images of man on the moon ever seen. A search has been launched, but 3 years into it, after scouring multiple NASA facilities, there's no sign of those tapes. And now many fear the spectacular images on them, images far superior to anything we've ever seen, may be lost forever.
There is an investigation underway into these missing tapes. NASA says they're going to complete it fairly soon, and they're going to let us know what the results are. Well,
let's hope they find those pictures. That would be pretty cool.
That would be spectacular. And to think the first time they went into space, one of the earliest shots, they didn't even think about taking a camera. It was only a last-minute decision to say, well, maybe we should have some pictures.
Yeah. Good decision.
Good
Tom,
decision.
thank you. It's easy to remember this historic space mission, but we're also looking back at all of it as it took place to see how it unfolded.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth.
The target for the Apollo 11 astronauts, the moon at liftoff, will be at a distance of 218,096 miles away. We've just passed the 2-minute mark in the countdown. T-minus 1 minute, 54 seconds and counting. Our status board indicates that the oxidizer tanks in the second and third stages now have pressurized. We continue to build up pressure in all 3 stages here at the last minute to prepare it for liftoff. T-minus 1 minute, 35 seconds on the Apollo mission, the flight to land of the first men on the moon. All indications coming in to the control center at this time indicate we are go. 1 minute, 25 seconds and counting. Our status board indicates the third stage completely pressurized. 80-second mark has now been passed. We'll go on full internal power at the 50-second mark in the countdown. Guidance system goes on internal at 17 seconds, leading up to the ignition sequence at 8.9 seconds. We're approaching the 60-second mark on the Apollo 11 mission. T-minus 60 seconds and counting. We passed T-minus 60. 55 seconds and counting. Neil Armstrong just reported back. It's been a real smooth countdown. We passed the 50-second mark. Power transfer is complete. We're on internal power with the launch vehicle at this time. 40 seconds away from the Apollo 11 liftoff. All the second stage tanks now pressurized. 35 seconds and counting. We are still go with Apollo 11. 30 seconds and counting. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 25 seconds. 20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Tower cleared. Neil Armstrong reported back when he received the good wishes. Thank you very much. We know it will be a good flight. Good luck and Godspeed.
And a website from the JFK Presidential Library has been recreating every minute of the Apollo 11 mission online, launched earlier this morning. Literally, let's bring in Abby and tell us what's happening right now.
Well, if it was 9:32 a.m. 40 years ago Eastern time that this liftoff happened. So let me show you what was happening at 9:32 a.m. this morning on this website. This is the liftoff recreated digitally 40 years on at the website WeChooseTheMoon.org. It's a collaboration with the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library, and it's taking you minute by minute through the entire mission. It's going to be doing this for the next 4 days, combining these amazing animations with archival footage as well, showing you what other people were seeing, showing you behind the scenes, showing you, if we can bring the steady camera over here, the million people who were around the launch watching it, the Launch Control Center you'll see there, and if we move across the screen to the right here, you'll see some of the behind the scenes footage as well. The astronauts going about their chores. You'll see astronaut Michael Collins there having a shave. If you watch this website, you'll see the key moments recreated in animation. A couple of hours ago, we were watching as the command service module broke away from the spacecraft, did a maneuver, rejoined the spacecraft. It's really amazing stuff. That was happening just as it did 40 years ago.
Tell us exactly the moment when man touches down on the moon. When is that going to be recreated?
The money shot, that's 4:17 p.m., July 20th. That will be Monday afternoon, and I know that CNN has a lot planned here for that moment.
We have a whole hour that we're going to recreate for our viewers. The excitement of that. Abby, thanks very much.
This is Shuttle Launch Control at T-minus 3 hours and holding. Members of the final inspection team, they are conducting a very thorough survey of Space Shuttle Endeavour, Endeavour's external tank, and indeed the launch pad surfaces. They're looking for abnormal ice or frost buildups, and if any is present, they will report it back to the team in the Launch Control Center a little bit later on when they complete their 2.5-hour survey. And here we see Commander Mark Polanski donning his ACES suit. He has his helmet on and he's ready to go. Pilot Doug Hurley. And Christopher Cassidy, who will become the 500th human in space when Endeavour launches. Finishing preparations of his suit up. 2 thumbs up today. Mission Specialist number 4, Dave Wolf, being assisted by a suit technician from United Space Alliance. This will be Dave's 4th space flight. Tom Marshburn, suited up and ready to go. He's Mission Specialist 3 and will be performing several of the spacewalks on the mission. And we were unable to watch Julie Payette suit up today, but we'll see her as she arrives at Launch Pad 39A. And we see Endeavour's crew once again exiting crew quarters and heading for the elevator. Thumbs up. ready to fly today. Chief of the Astronaut Office, Steve Lindsay, and others joining the crew as they make their way down to the Astrovan. Hopeful that the 6th time is the charm. And here they are. And the Astrovan door is closed. Endeavour's STS-127 crew is about to make its way out to launch pad 39A. We're looking at a view from the top of the vehicle assembly building of the Astrovan and its convoy, and we're stopping to allow Steve Lindsay to exit. He'll make his way over to the shuttle landing facility just north of this area to board a T-38 training aircraft and begin some weather reconnaissance flights. And the Astrovan has arrived at the base of launch pad 39A, about to deliver STS-127's astronauts to Space Shuttle Endeavour. Crew is making its way out of the vehicle. The closeout crew will be assisting all of Endeavour's astronauts with their harnesses, helping them into their seats, and so will the insertion technicians. Getting handshakes from members of the closeout crew. You can see members of the closeout crew assisting Commander Mark Polanski with his harness. Mark Polanski is a veteran of 2 previous space flights, STS-116 and STS-98. He'll be managing the crew, as commanders do, and will be conducting Endeavour's docking to the International Space Station on Friday. And a big wave from Commander Mark Polanski. Tim Kopra is in the White Room. A salute from Commander Mark Polanski as he climbs through the hatch and up to the commander seat in the forward left portion of the flight deck aboard Endeavour. Tim Kopra once again will be seated on the middeck on the right side, furthest away from the hatch. He's a colonel in the U.S. Army, making his first space flight, and it will be a long-duration flight as he leaves Endeavour's crew shortly after docking and becomes a member of the International Space Station crew, replacing Koichi Wakata. Looking at a cabin-mounted camera as Commander Mark Polanski pulls himself across to the left-hand seat in the front portion of Endeavour, laying on his back as the orbiter is pointed up. Members of the closeout crew helping him to strap into place. Playful activity in the White Room as Tim Kopra is excited to board Endeavour and hopefully launch today. Pilot Doug Hurley takes his place in the foreground in the White Room. He's a pilot of the mission and a colonel in the U.S. Marine Corps. This is his first space flight, but once again, he is very accustomed to flying. He has more than 3,200 hours in 22 different aircraft. We see from one of our cameras in the middeck, Tim Kopra getting strapped into place. And a nice wave from Commander Mark Polanski at the camera. As Steve Bowen, wearing number 2, and insertion tech Mike Thompson, wearing number 3, help the commander into his strapped into his seat. Outside of the White Room, we see other crew members awaiting their turn to be prepped and ready for entry into Endeavour. Those are coolant hoses that are attached to their suits as they stand out in the afternoon heat. And Tom Marshburn is in the foreground. He's mission specialist number 3. He'll be conducting spacewalks on flight days 6, 10, and 13. He's a former NASA flight surgeon and an emergency doctor. Work continues to configure Mark Polanski's suit. Get all the communications systems hooked up. And work continues on the middeck. And Tom Marshburn waves. He's ready to go fly today, as are all of his crewmates. We see a view of Doug Hurley about to climb into his seat. And once again, he's being assisted by a member of the closeout crew who also is a fellow astronaut, Steve Bowen, our astronaut support personnel today. Tom Marshburn is about to climb into his seat in the middeck. Seat number 5 on the far left side. And a big wave from Chris Cassidy, wearing his rally cap in hopes that that will change our luck. Cassidy, who will become the 500th human in space, is making his first space flight today. He was a U.S. Navy SEAL for 10 years, and he's Mission Specialist 1 on this flight.
I'm sorry,
He's a commander of the U.S. Navy, commander in the U.S. Navy.
Copies will work that by the clock.
He'll be performing spacewalks on flight day 8, 10, and 13. Back on the flight deck, pilot Doug Hurley is receiving assistance and getting his helmet configured, communications gear in place, and strapped in. Dave Wolf is our lead spacewalker on this mission. He continues to suit up in the White Room. He'll be conducting spacewalks on flight day 4, flight day 6, and flight day 8. Looking from a top-down camera inside Endeavour's flight deck. Out of view to your left is pilot Doug Hurley. To your right, we can see Commander Mark Polanski. In the background, a couple members of the closeout crew are helping to configure Chris Cassidy's seat. And on the middeck, about to be seated in the center seat, is Dave Wolf. And we're pleased to be joined in the White Room by mission specialist and Canadian Space Agency astronaut Julie Payette. Julie is the final crew member to board Endeavour today. Julie is very enthusiastic today. Members of the closeout crew assisting her with her harness.
NTD, MS3, com check. MS3, this is NTD. I have you loud and clear. Good afternoon, Tom. Good afternoon, Steve.
Julie Payette signaling she is go and blowing a kiss. And a happy wave as she shakes the hands of the closeout crew and will make her way through the hatch and into Endeavour, the final crew member to board the space shuttle today.
OTC, MS4, com check. MS4, OTC, have you loud and clear. Good afternoon, David. You are loud and clear, Doug.
Dave Wolf doing his communications checks as we saw Julie Payette getting into her seat on the flight deck.
Yes, a NASA Q and a CMQC on 142.
I copy, I'll get them on 142. And actually, we need them on 242, please. I copy 242. And all systems on 212, verify systems ready for crew module closeout. You see that 682? Copy. Show 681 complete. Copy that.
Endeavour Houston, for the entire crew, com check.
CDR loud and clear. ELT. MS1. MS2. MS3. MS4. MS5.
Endeavour, we read you all loud and clear. This completes the air-to-ground voice checks.
Attention on the net. This is the NTD conducting the launch status check. All stations, verify ready to resume count and go for launch. OTC? OTCs go. TBC? TBC go. PTC? PTC is go. LPS? LPS is go. Flight?
Houston flight is go.
Mila?
Milo's go.
STM? STM is go. Safety console? Safety consoles go. SPE? SPE is go, sir. LRD? LRD is go. SRO? SRO is go. You have a range clear to launch. And CDR? CDR is go. And Launch Director, NTD, the launch team is ready to proceed. All right, Launch Director copies. I'll conduct my poll. KSC Processing Chief Engineer, verify no constraint to launch.
No constraints.
Copy, thanks, Steve. KSC Shuttle, Safety and Mission Assurance. KSC SMA is go. Copy that, thanks, Barry. KSC Payload Launch Manager. Pete, ISS Ground Processing, and our Jackson partners are go. Copy, thank you, Bill. Range weather.
Weather has no constraints for launch.
Copy, thank you, Kathy. And Ops Manager.
Pete, you've done a great job leading the team to this point through all the hurdles that were thrown at us. The MFT isn't tracking any issues. Looks like this is our day. You're go to launch.
Copy, thank you, sir. And Endeavour Launch Director. Go ahead. All Roman, the vehicle's ready. Our support teams are definitely ready. And the weather is finally cooperating, so it is now time to fly.
Persistence pays off. Good luck and Godspeed.
Pete, thanks to you and everyone that's worked so hard for this moment. Endeavor's patiently waited for this. We're ready to go, and we're going to take all of you with us on a great mission. Thanks a lot.
Copy that. An NTD launch director, you have a go to launch Endeavour. Copy. Go for launch. Thank you.
Just a few seconds away from resuming the countdown for the launch of Endeavour.
Countdown clock will resume on my mark.
3, 2, 1, and we are at T-minus 9 minutes and counting.
Sequence has been initiated.
And the ground launch sequencer has been initiated. All countdown functions are now automatically controlled by the GLS computer located in the firing room integration console. And the orbiter access arm now is being retracted away from Endeavour.
Endeavour, the world will be watching as you complete the Kibo module, making the Japanese a fully functional partner. Ike Roshai. Have a nice trip.
You bet. Thank you.
Those are words from orbiter test conductor Doug Palin to Commander Mark Polanski. The orbiter access arm is the walkway used by the crew to gain entry into the shuttle, and it can be returned to position within seconds if necessary. T-minus 4 minutes.
GLS is go for purge sequence 4.
The final helium purge of the 3 main engines is underway in preparation for engine start. And a final test of the flight control surfaces is now being conducted. It's a pre-programmed pattern of movements designed to verify the readiness for launch of the flight control surfaces, the elevons, speed brakes, and rudder. T-minus 3 minutes, 26 seconds and counting. Final aero surface checks are complete, and Endeavour's 3 main engines will be gimbaled through a pre-programmed series of maneuvers as a final test before launch. The gaseous oxygen vent hood, or beanie cap, is slowly being retracted away from the top of the external tank. External fuel cell loading is terminated, and Endeavour's fuel cells are using their onboard reactants.
OTC PLT, no unexpected errors.
Copy that. Endeavour, close and lock your visors and initiate O2 flow.
Endeavour, copy.
T-minus 2 minutes and counting. Liquid hydrogen replenish of the external tank is now being terminated. T-minus 1 minute, 40 seconds and counting. All systems are go. About 90 seconds from the launch of Shuttle Endeavour.
30 seconds.
T-minus 1 minute, 10 seconds. T-minus 1 minute and counting. The ground launch sequencer will verify that the 3 main engines are ready to start. The booster joint heaters are being deactivated at this time. T-minus 50 seconds. We're transferring to orbital internal power. Endeavour is now running off of its 3 onboard fuel cells. Coming up on a go for auto sequence start at T-minus 31 seconds.
TLS is go for auto sequence start.
T-minus 27 seconds and counting. Endeavour's onboard computers have primary control of all the vehicle's critical functions. T-minus 18 seconds.
15.
The sound suppression water system has been activated, protecting Endeavour and the launch pad from acoustical energy. We're go for main engine start. We have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Endeavour, completing Kibo and fulfilling Japan's hope for an out-of-this-world space laboratory.
Houston, Endeavour, roll program.
Roger, roll, Endeavour.
This is Mission Control Houston. Endeavour's roll maneuver is being completed. It's now going into a heads-down position on track for its flight to the International Space Station. Flying at 400 miles per hour. 1 mile in altitude and 7 miles downrange already from the Kennedy Space Center. Endeavour's engines were throttling down as the orbiter passes through the area of maximum pressure on the vehicle. Now 50 seconds into the flight.
Endeavour, go at throttle up. Go at throttle up.
The 3 engines on board are throttling back up. Endeavour flying at 1,100 miles per hour, 10 miles in altitude, and 10 miles downrange. At liftoff, the fully fueled shuttle, boosters, and external tank weighed 4.5 million pounds. The total thrust at launch was 6,425,000 pounds. 1 minute 33 seconds into the flight, Endeavour flying at 1,900 miles per hour, 17 miles in altitude, and 16 miles downrange. All systems continue to function well. Endeavour has 3 good main engines, 3 good power generating fuel cells, and 3 good auxiliary power units for the hydraulic system. We'll be standing by for burnout and separation of the solid rocket boosters. Combined, the twin boosters provide 5.3 million pounds of thrust to propel the orbiter towards space. Booster officer confirms the SRBs, or solid rocket boosters, have separated. 2 minutes and 20 seconds into the flight. Endeavour flying at 3,100 miles per hour, 37 miles in altitude, and 51 miles downrange.
Endeavour, 2-engine Marone.
2-engine Marone.
Roman, on L1, we'd like high-load duct heater to Alpha Slant Bravo.
Complete.
Copy.
Commander Mark Polanski adjusting a heater on the environmental control and life support system. Endeavour can reach Marone in the event of a single engine failure. However, all 3 main engines are still operating well. Now 3 minutes, 20 seconds into the flight. Endeavour is flying at 4,000 miles per hour. Booster officer confirms that all 3 engines are performing well. Endeavour at an altitude of 56 statute miles and 120 miles downrange from the Kennedy Space Center.
Endeavour, negative return.
Negative return.
Roman, the extra duct heaters were because we saw a little cooling in the ducts.
Copy.
Now 4 minutes and 18 seconds into the flight, Endeavour is now flying too high and too fast to return to the Kennedy Space Center and the Space Shuttle landing facility in the event of an engine failure. All 3 Space Shuttle main engines continue to function well. The environmental systems officer also confirmed that the flash evaporator system has been activated to provide cooling before the payload bay doors are open in orbit.
Endeavour, press to ATO. Select Zaragoza.
Press to ATO, select Zaragoza.
Now 5 minutes and 22 seconds into the flight, Endeavour could now reach a lower than planned orbit, but a safe orbit on 2 engines should 1 fail. All 3 engines are still operating well.
Endeavour, single engine ops 3.
Single engine ops 3.
Endeavour could conduct a transatlantic abort landing on one engine should 2 fail at this point, all 3 continuing to perform well. Endeavour is flying at 8,300 miles per hour, 67 miles in altitude, 350 miles downrange. Endeavour's engines have been commanded to swivel to put the orbiter in the proper heads-up position. That for communications with the tracking and data relay satellites.
Endeavour, press to MECO.
Press to MECO.
And single engine Zaragoza 104.
Single engine Zaragoza 104.
6 minutes, 30 seconds into the flight. That call about press to MECO.
Nominal shutdown plan. Go for the plus X, go for the pitch.
Copy, nominal shutdown, go plus X, go pitch.
Endeavour can reach the planned orbit on 2 engines, however all 3 continuing to perform well. And the shutdown plan of those engines is nominal, as Capcom Alan Poindexter indicated to Commander Mark Polanski.
Endeavour, single engine press 104.
Single engine press 104.
7 minutes and 12 seconds into the flight, Endeavour can reach its planned orbit on 1 engine should 2 fail, and all 3 are continuing to perform well. Endeavour is flying at 12,700 miles per hour, 65 miles in altitude, and 613 miles downrange from the Kennedy Space Center. 7 minutes, 35 seconds into the flight, and the engines are throttling down to maintain structural limits on the orbiter as it passes or approaches loads near 3 times gravity. Eight minutes, 31 seconds into the flight, booster officer confirms the main engine cutoff. And external tank separation is confirmed. Endeavour and its STS-127 crew in orbit, continuing on the mission to the International Space Station.
Nominal MECO, ohms 1, not required.
Endeavour copies.
Good morning, Endeavour, and a special good morning to you today, Tim.
Good morning, Shannon. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed the music this morning, and it's really beautiful up here.
The orbiter boom sensor system also includes an intensified television camera, which gives the plain black and white TV views that we often see from other cameras inside the shuttle's cargo bay. And then a laser camera system, which is a scanning laser rangefinder that can be used as a 3D camera to create 3D computer-generated models of the heat shield. This inspection today will take about 7 hours in all if you include the time it takes to actually get the orbiter boom sensor system set up and then put it back into its place along the sill of the shuttle's cargo bay later tonight. All about 7 hours, and requires, for the most part, 3 crew members. It takes 3 because you need 2 crew members to control the robotic arms movement, and then another crew member to operate the other shuttle cameras that are being used inside the shuttle's cabin for situational awareness and clearance views. Today, the 3 that have drawn that duty are Commander Mark Polinsky, pilot Doug Hurley, and mission specialist Julie Payette. Again, they're starting here with the starboard or right wing of Endeavour, and then we'll move from there to the nose cap, and then after a break for lunch to the port or left wing. As you can see, Commander Mark Polinsky, pilot Doug Hurley, and mission specialist Julie Payette are getting into the orbiter boom sensor system survey of the shuttle's starboard wing, beginning of their survey for the day. And teams on the ground also report that mission specialist Dave Wolf, Tim Copra, and Chris Cassidy are well into their checkout of the spacesuits that Endeavour is carrying to the International Space Station.
Houston Endeavour, recorders are off. We show ourselves complete with the starboard survey, and we're going to set up for the maneuver for the nose cap.
We copy and concur.
downlink from Shuttle Endeavour now as it's passing 149 miles above Paris. It's making a cross over Western Europe at this time. Its current path is going to take it out over Switzerland and then the northern part of Italy here in just a few minutes. You see some storms there, some lightning in the clouds over Europe. That is the city of Zurich, Switzerland down below.
Endeavour Houston for Roman and the flight plan.
Go ahead.
Roman, since we got you ahead a little bit, if you're available, we're ready for the interconnect tank switch from right to left that's on your flight plan at about 0:35. You could start that now if you're ready.
That sounds great. Thanks. I'll put that in work, and Julie and Doug are going to go straight to the OBSS berth.
Perfect. Thanks.
This is Mission Control to Houston. The crew of Endeavour officially finished with the port wing survey using the orbiter boom sensor system. The next step is for the crew to go ahead and berth or put that OBSS extension back into the payload bay where it will remain.